How do you tell if a coach, a program, or an exercise actually does what it says it does? Well, in today's video, I'm going to tell you guys how I personally go through fact-checking a lot of the bullshit that I see on the internet. What's up, guys? My name is John Evans. I coach the highest jumper in the world, Isaiah Rivera, who has a 50.5-inch vertical, and I've coached him from a 42-inch vertical and crippling knee pain to now being the world record holder for vertical leap. Across that period of time, I have learned a lot about the claims and bullshit that I've seen on the internet and what is and isn't legit. And I'm gonna tell you guys how I personally go through that process. Now, this video is inspired by my individual experience as a 13-year-old kid who was trying to learn about jump training for the first time. When I was 13, there was the internet, but we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have social media, and maybe there was MySpace. So finding information was a lot more difficult, and the information that you found, even if it was on YouTube, you generally had to be relatively skeptical because the claims were absolutely ridiculous. So for example, a program might come out and say, increase your vertical by 8 inches in 3 weeks. I did that program for 3 weeks and my vertical didn't go up 8 inches. As a result, I'm upset, I've wasted time, I've wasted money that I didn't really have because I'm making $10 cutting grass an hour or a day. And now I'm frustrated and I have an emotional attachment to making sure the next time I do something that actually works. So I'm gonna tell you guys how I got to the point that I am now when it comes to sifting through and filtering out what is good information and what is ultimately bad information that I would not consider to be reputable. So the first thing that you want to do to tell if you're being marketed to or if you're actually being told something that's honest and genuine is look at the language. What type of language are they using? Are they using marketing terms or are they using scientific terms? If they're using words like proven, you should have learned in 8th grade science class that nothing can necessarily be proven. It can be supported, but if someone is saying it has been proven or this has been proven by this one example, all it takes to disprove that is one example that says in opposition to that, right? That's why scientific laws are so difficult to come into actuality or to come into relevance, because it only takes one example where that isn't true to completely disprove a scientific law. Even gravity, we've had examples where we've seen gravity become a wave, and so it's not necessarily proven. Gravity is even being, in some ways, challenged, or at least our understanding of it is being challenged. So if someone uses the term proven, they're trying to sell you something, they probably don't have your best interest at heart, and they're looking to line their pocket. The next thing, are they making up words? If you see a coach who makes up a term or makes up some sort of word that isn't scientific or you can't find in research or a textbook, they're trying to sell you something. They're trying to introduce a concept that might be unfamiliar to you or challenge your assumptions. It's a common term or a common way that people who market are trying to get you to buy their product. For example, if you've ever seen OxyClean or something like that, they might start yelling at you and using terms like, this has never been done before, and we have this patented special product. If it sounds like an infomercial, or muscle confusion is another good example. If it sounds like an infomercial, it probably is an infomercial. They're trying to sell you something and their product doesn't work. They're just convincing you that it works so that, again, they can line their pocket. The next thing is it scientific or is it unscientific? If you're seeing something on the internet or an Instagram post and you're just taking it for what it is and it sounds unscientific, then it probably is unscientific. At the end of the day, science serves us a valuable purpose in sifting through the bullshit. It tells us what is objectively true and not necessarily what we think is true or what we think something is. It tells us, based on all of the evidence that we have in these very controlled situations, we know that this is true 90% of the time or 99% of the time. And so if something sounds unscientific, it's probably not something you should be doing, and it's probably something that is ultimately wasting your time. Next, do they have qualifications? Is the person that is telling you the information that they're telling you qualified? And I'm not saying in the sense of do they jump high or do they run fast. That is largely determined by genetics, and odds are what they did will probably not work for 99% of people. If you're watching this video, then you're probably not in the 99.999 repeating percentile. For example, most of the elite high jumpers that you're gonna see this weekend at the Olympics are already genetic freaks. If you look at their high jump marks when they were 16 or 17 years old, they were already jumping 220 or 230 in high jump, which is 7.3 or 7.4. So if they're telling you to do something or what they did to jump high, odds are it was the result of their genetics and development and their ability to pick their parents more so than it was their ability to actually train to get to a point where they've improved. You should be looking at which athletes have improved the most with the least amount of genetic ability. That said, the coach or the person telling you this information, what certifications do they have? What degrees do they have? What's their coaching experience? And this is relevant because it's probably based off of science and something unbiased. As soon as you introduce bias into a situation, all of a sudden its relevance is going to decrease and its ability to apply to the general masses or the general public or the athlete population is going to decrease. And now that claim that they made is probably not really relevant and probably isn't going to work for you. The next is, have they coached an athlete or are they claiming an athlete? Now what this means is there are coaches who will basically feed off of this idea that, oh, well, I've coached this athlete who's a genetic freak. I've coached this high jumper who coaches 230, or I've coached this athlete who is a 9-second, 990, 100-meter dash guy. Did they coach that athlete and develop that athlete to that point, or did they just claim that athlete after that athlete had done all the work on their own and worked with another coach and potentially got to a point where now they are at this elite level and now this coach works with them over a weekend and they're claiming them as if they've developed them to that point? As a coach in sports performance, I see it all the time. As soon as an athlete or a coach pairs with an athlete, they'll say, well, I coached this athlete and that's why you should work with me because look how good this athlete is. That doesn't mean the coach was effectively getting that athlete to that point. It just means that they're using that athlete to market and once again, make a profit off of you. I personally take a lot of pride in doing this, and that is developing athletes. I don't post anything without working with athletes for an extensive period of time. If I've only worked with them for a month, I'm not going to claim their progress as something that I've done. Now, if they've done my program every single day for the last 6 months, and I've talked to that athlete, and I've coached that athlete, and I've worked with that athlete, then I know that I have coached this athlete, and I have not claimed this athlete. And I'm very careful in doing that as I've progressed. I might say I've started working with an athlete, but that doesn't mean that their results were necessarily due to something that I have done. The next one that I want to go over is, who is their coach and should that person be coaching you? So for example, my mentor is Mike Young. He's one of the most world-renowned track coaches in the entire world. He worked with Boosh Schexnayder. Boosh Schexnayder has developed a ton of world-class athletes. His mentor is Dan Paff, who has a ton of gold medalists, a ton of Olympians, a ton of medalists in world championships and Olympics. And his mentor was Tom Tellez, who coached Carl Lewis, and you guys should probably know who Carl Lewis is. So my question to you is, if you're getting coached by me, should you be getting coached by me or should you be getting coached by the people who coached me and mentored me to the position that I'm in? Now, hopefully at this point, you know that I've developed and polished and refurbished all of the things that I learned from them as it applies to 2-foot jumping and 1-foot jumping, specifically when it comes to volleyball and dunking. The next one is fact check everything that a coach says. Don't just take someone's word at their word. Go back and do a quick fact check on it. These days, it is so easy to find information, and if someone is already giving you a lead into what they're saying, you're probably gonna be able to fact check that very quickly and figure out if that information is accurate or if it's not accurate. How do you know how to fact check things correctly, or what's the process for doing that? Just go into Google Scholar and type in the keywords. If a study comes up, you can probably just look at the abstract, which is a paragraph long, and see if it's legit or not. Yesterday, I was talking to one of my athletes, Nick Rossa, and I was like, what convinced you to sign up with us? And he said, well, I fact checked everything you said, and it came back as true. I would try to disprove you, and I couldn't. And I was like, well, there you go. Moving on to the next one is, do they misrepresent data to sell a product? So if a coach or an individual is saying, we've helped X amount of athletes do blah, 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 and even myself, we sometimes do this, and I try to get away from it at all costs, you should be a little bit skeptical. Oftentimes when an individual is giving you a data or a poll or a survey, it's just to get you to buy their product. If they're gonna make a crazy claim, then odds are they're gonna misrepresent the data so that they're able to convince you, again, to line their pocket. What you wanna do is try to find people who actually are taking the information from their product or from their data, and they're applying it or giving it to you in an unbiased, honest way. At the end of the day, no one wants to be lied to, no one wants to be taken advantage of, and you should be really careful of that when you're spending your hard-earned money on something that you want to work with an expectation that it is gonna work. Lastly, and this is maybe something that would be a little bit difficult, but I recommend doing is, are their claims substantiated? So and this kind of goes back to fact checking, but if someone makes a claim like, yeah, I've helped blah, blah, blah athlete over blah, blah, blah time, again, did you fact check that to see if that claim was actually substantiated? Is there research that actually backs that claim? If someone says, this exercise is the best exercise, are there any substantiated evidence that indicates that? And so how do you know if something's substantiated? Well, word of mouth and what someone tells you is probably the weakest form of evidence. It's typically biased, there's a lot of variables involved, and it's easy to construe what the actual information was. The next thing would be a proper case study. Were there quantitative things measured? Did you include all the limitations? Did you include the variables that might have affected the outcome that you saw? The next would be a proper research study. So did you get a group of individuals and did you look at their changes before and after? Or did you look at two groups and did you compare that? Then maybe it would be a double-blind study where they didn't know which group they were in. You applied a given independent variable, looked at a dependent variable and looked at the results. You've controlled for everything, you've measured everything, and you're unbiased in that situation. And then the last thing would be a conglomeration of that evidence, which is a meta-analysis. So that would be the ultimate gold standard for information. Now and that would be a conglomeration of a bunch of data or a bunch of research studies that generally is showing a trend or a direction that we see in that given topic. So for example, a lot of coaches will say Olympic lifts don't work. Well, if you look at meta-analyses and you look at research studies, you'll find that Olympic lifts do work for improving power output and they do work for increasing standing counter movement jump. Now, if you look at claims where coaches will say all you need to do are plyometrics. Well, if we look at research on plyometrics, we see that, yeah, sometimes it improves your counter movement jump, sometimes it doesn't improve your counter movement jump, or sometimes it improves your joint stiffness, but it might not improve these other indices that are more important when it comes to jumping higher off one foot or running faster. And so it's important to make sure that when someone says something, you need to look up to see, is what they're saying substantiated in evidence, or has it been demonstrated in a wide body of work or literature, or has it been demonstrated in a population where it is objective? Or is it just going based off of what that coach said? I've worked with 1,000 bodybuilders and I've helped them do increase 10 pounds in 3 months. Is that substantiated at all? And how do you know? Are they just trying to, once again, sell you something because they're a big buff guy, or are they actually good at their job? So guys, there you have it. There are 7 ways to tell if a program, a coach, or an exercise is actually effective. I strongly encourage you guys to use this on myself and hold me accountable, as well as my peers, my coaches, the people that work for me, and the people that do my program, to tell if something is legit or if it's not, and they're just trying to get views, follows, likes, or ultimately your money. There you have it, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.